Hello everyone, we are going to discuss about the modes of discourse. Good writing depends on factors such as purpose, type of writing, and audience. That's why knowledge of the major categories of the rhetorical modes is important, or the modes of discourse. This notion accounts for the variety that one finds in texts. Rhetorical modes, also called as mode of discourse, refer to the variety, conventions, and purposes of the major kinds of writing. In fact, there are four major categories of modes of discourse. They are the following. These four traditional modes of discourse are narration, description, exposition, and argument. Narration is storytelling. It involves relating a series of events, usually in a chronological order. Thus, a simple narrative may begin with once upon a time and end with and they lived happily ever after. The events narrated may be fictional, a made up story, or non fictional, the events really occurred. However, we usually reserve the title story for fiction if the events actually happened. We give the writing another name such as biography, autobiography, history, after action report, or newspaper report. At its simplest, description tells what things are like according to the five senses. A descriptive essay or a descriptive passage in the story tells how things look, sound, feel, taste, and smell. Nouns and adjectives can show what a person, place, or thing are like in their material aspects. But description often tries to do more than to enable readers to visualize characters, settings, and actions. It may also try to evoke a mood or atmosphere, and that is aided by the use of simile and metaphor. Exposition is the kind of writing that is used to inform. The prefix ex comes from the Greek true Latin and means out or away from. The root of the word comes from the Latin verb ponere, which means to place. So, translated literally, exposition means to place out, and of course, the thing that is placed out for us to see and understand is information. This mode of writing has several subtypes, the most common being process analysis, definition, classification and division, comparison and contrast, cause and effect, and problem and solution. These are distinguished by purpose, as the names indicate, but also by structure or organization. For example, an experienced writer understands that an essay that compares and contrasts or that describes a problem and presents a solution each has its own conventional pattern of organization, and that once readers recognize the intended mode, they also expect the writer to follow the organizational conventions associated with it. The final mode of discourse is argument. The purpose of argument is to convince through logic. An argument is based on a belief or opinion that the writer holds as true. The statement of this opinion is called a thesis. It is usually presented explicitly near the beginning of the argument. To convince readers that his opinion is true, the writer must build a case to support the thesis. Building a case requires presenting reasons for accepting the thesis and then presenting evidence to support the reasons. If the reader accepts the reasons and the evidence, then he should agree with the thesis. The argumentative mode of discourse has a variation known as persuasion. Argument and persuasion differ in two primary ways. The first is the intent. While the intent of argument is to present reasons and evidence to elicit logical agreement, the purpose of persuasion goes beyond this to get the reader to act on his belief. A successful argument may convince someone that candidate X is the best choice, but successful persuasion will make the person vote for candidate X. The second way the two differ is the methods that a writer uses to win the assent of its readers. The Greek philosopher Aristotle suggested in his rhetoric that there are three kinds of proofs that speakers or writers may use to win over an audience. He called the first logos, and it employs evidence and reasoning. In other words, the writer must give facts and figures, experts' testimony, illustrative examples, or other kinds of evidence, and then demonstrate how this support his thesis. Both argument and persuasion make use of logos. But persuasion also employs pathos, which is proof based on motives and emotions. According to Osborne, appeals to emotions are made primarily through narratives. For example, the story of how a young girl was raped and murdered by a registered sex offender in Florida might be used to persuade lawmakers to pass laws requiring closer monitoring of sex offenders. Next is ethos, which assumes that people can be persuaded by the personal influence of the source of a message. In a speech, the speaker must project an impression that he is honest, sincere, and trustworthy. He must establish credibility and be likable. If he is successful, the audience will be more inclined to accept and to act on his message. In written appeals, ethos is also important. One way for a writer to establish credibility is to be well informed about the topic and to know both sides of the issue that she is arguing. If a reader senses that the writer does not know what she is talking about, then she has lost credibility and will not be able to convince or persuade. Citing authorities and including a work's cited page are evidence that the writer has done her homework and that what she says is based on valid and reliable information. Osborne described a fourth kind of proof that can be used in persuasion. They call it mythos. Proof by mythos assumes that people value their membership in the society and share in its cultural heritage. Mythos is the sum total of stories, values, faith, feelings, and roles that make up the social character of a people. Proof by mythos often calls upon patriotism, cultural pride, and the heroes or enemies as evidence. Identifying the modes of discourse is a convenient way to talk about writing, and a specific essay or longer works may be labeled narration, description, exposition, or argument. However, the various modes are almost never found in a pure form but are embedded one within another and work in concert to help the writer achieve his purpose. So we are going to review the four types of modes of discourse. The first is description, which appeals on the five senses. It can be informative, impressionistic, organizational, or contain figurative language. The second is exposition, which explains or informs and is used mostly in non-fiction, especially articles, essays, and various books. The third is narration, which tells a story, tells or retells a sequence of events within a particular time frame for a specific purpose and needs a point of view. The last mode of discourse is argument, which presents a position in hopes that the reader will accept an assertion. Necessary parts are a clear assertion, qualifying or opposing another's view, and convincing the audience to change its own view. Thank you for listening.